So recently, over the last couple of rides, I've had an issue which I believe actually is quite common with this and the Crossfire bike from Halfords, whereby I've had error codes displayed, random error codes. One just says ERR, the other one said ER9, I think, and then ER0. Seemingly random, but obviously something is being generated in an intelligent manner by either the controller, the battery, or the display, which I guess would still be the battery. If you look at this battery here, this is the E-Spec battery, the Suntour battery from the Vulcan, you'll see that it says here Smart BMS inside, so that's got a battery management system. So the reason the motor or the battery cuts power to the motor in certain situations will always be something to do with it operating outside of its normal parameters, and therefore the BMS has made an intelligent decision to switch off power to the motor for a certain reason. So there's always a reason behind it. I've got to work out what that reason is, because I don't want this to keep happening, or even though I know it's probably quite a common situation, and it seems like reading the forums you can resolve it by simply just resetting the battery, i.e. pressing the battery button on and off. So it's a kind of Windows scenario, but I don't really want to continue like that. I have a feeling that it's probably a loose connection somewhere. I know it's notorious, the bike, for having loose connections between the display and the battery, and then the battery to the hub motor, because the hub motor cable sits clipped on the chainstay. And if you're giving it a hardtail, and a very heavy hardtail at that, if you're going over extremely undulating terrain which is going to vibrate the bike, which it has done recently, I think I can correlate my error codes and therefore the motor shutting down temporarily to instances where I've gone over extremely bumpy terrain. So I think it's entirely likely that if I make some modifications, i.e. tighten the cables, check that all the connections are tight, we'll give it another go and see how it fares, but I think that might solve it. Anyway, I'm hoping it will solve it. So I'll be brutally honest, I'm afraid, well, for me more than anything, I'm not sure this or this being secured, i.e. the cable from the battery to the motor, or this, which was a bit of a token gesture anyway to try and keep the battery from wobbling from its connector points, is the answer. I think it's going to be one of these cables, probably this cable here, which is the connector to, I think, the battery. So today it's a prime example of this, what I think is quite a common error. So every so often it's intermittent, this sign EOO comes on. Now it's literally as simple as switching off and on again. You can see instantly it powers up again. So it has to be, by a process of deduction, a connection issue with the screen to the battery, which then powers down the motor when it cuts out. So before this fix, I was having a cutout probably at its worst once every quarter of a mile, making it basically unrideable. Honestly thought I was coming to the end of its useful life after 200 miles, but look, this is bumpy as hell, and not one failure in nearly 10 miles so far, just with a simple zip tie. As you can see, it's so bumpy that I can't actually hold the camera properly. So yeah, absolutely sound as a pound so far. We'll report on it when I get back. So I don't consider myself a particularly technically minded or proficient kind of guy, but when you buy a cheap e-bike, particularly something that's second hand and doesn't have the luxury of a warranty, or the comfort at least of a warranty, and with something like the Vulcan E-Spec, which has known faults, albeit they seem to be surmountable, it's difficult to know where you stand when something goes wrong and you've gone through the chain of command and the way that the thing is connected, because there could be so many weak links in the chain. You could have a failure between, for instance, the cable that connects the hub motor and the battery, which is very loose, which is why I've cable tied the whole thing, double tied. You could have a failure where the battery itself is actually loose. I've tried gaffer taping that, didn't do anything. And then you could have what seems to be the most common complaint, a failure between the control unit and the battery pack, which then cuts out power intermittently to the hub motor. I think we've solved it. Now, fingers crossed, because one simple cable tie has kept this finicky, loose and pretty cheap plasticky screen from moving on some really severely rough trails. Been on a coastal off-road path today, which is very undulating, very bumpy, and this so far in just under 10 miles has kept it all secure. Sorry, just over 10 miles. If I was to put another cable tie on there, I'd be fairly confident it would get over some of the worst trails. If I was going downhill on rocky terrain, I think this would be fine. So this seems to be the fix. If you've got a problem where you're getting error messages and you're getting intermittent cutouts, try tying this tight and making sure it doesn't move. I think this is a solution. So that's 12.7 miles, 59 minutes, nearly an hour. Not one failure. So this is a temporary fix at the very least, if not the saviour to all the problems.